in order to to cut any possibility for Cubans to to find solutions to some problems they are facing, food or some medication, etc. Intimidate foreign direct investment and trade, and disrupt Cuban economic and cooperative relations with first countries. We said that it is not an embargo, because embargo means when one country decided not to have relations with another one. Okay, it is your decision. But the blockade is more than. The blockade is how can I avoid any kind of relationship with one country to another country in the world. And this is what the blockade policy is looking for, trying to isolate Cuba, not to have possibility for Cubans to have normal relations with any country in the world. The other decision has been to include Cuba in the list of countries that sponsor terrorism. I remember 10 days before Biden left the office, they decided to put Cuba out of the list of countries that sponsor terrorism. That was a decision taken by the first Trump administration. They created a working group with different US institutions, and they studied very deeply what is the situation if Cuba has finding any single sample, if Cuba is supporting any kind of terrorist actions against any country. They didn't find. So they decided to put Cuba out of the list 10 days before leaving the office. But 2 days after Trump came into the White House, he decided to include Cuba in that list. It is politically motivated, because once Cuba is in the list of countries that supposedly sponsor terrorism, they have the pretext in order to reinforce the economic measures against Cuba. And Cuba cannot have normal relations with any financial institutions, international financial institutions. It's difficult to find a single bank in the world that would like to work with Cuba. Anytime we should pay to any procurement, for any purchases that we have with any company in the world, we have to face many problems in order to assure the financial transaction, because it's very difficult. It is what they did, including Cuba in this list. It is the most impactful measure against our country today, and we really need an international campaign demanding the US government to put Cuba out of the list of the countries that sponsor terrorism. Even because Cuba has been, during all these 65 years, a victim of the terrorist actions even from the US territory, in order to attempt against our leaders. Fidel suffered more than 630 different attempts of assassination, mainly from the US. This is Cuba. We provide, as I explained, collaboration, international support, medical support to the people, but in any case, we support any kind of terrorist actions against any country. Let's go for the next one. Well, other measures that has been taken, for example, as I explained, it's difficult to have the opportunity to transfer any financial resources abroad. With the ban of regular bilateral trade between US and Cuba, that is difficult for us to buy anything, of course, importing anything from the US market that is just 90 miles from Cuba. Also the US government allows US courts to file some lawsuits against individual or company in any country. What is the problem? I would like to explain. Before 1959, before the Cuban Revolution, the US companies dominated completely the Cuban economy. 70% of the land in Cuba, productive land, was in the hands of the United States Free Company and others. 50% of the electricity supply belongs to the US companies. The banking system was managed by the US banks. And if you see to any sector in the Cuban economy, they were a huge presence of the US companies. When the Cuban Revolution triumphed in the first year in 1959, one of the decisions was to nationalize all these properties. And we offered to many countries, because French companies, from other Italian companies, Spanish companies were also in Cuba, and we offered compensation. They accepted, except US. They said not, because they believed at that time that in few days this revolution cannot resist in front of the US. And they are going to defeat the revolution in few days, and they are going to come back to Cuba to recover their ownership of these sectors. But it didn't happen. And we are still 65 years later, we are still stand up, and won't happen in the future. So through these lawsuits, any citizen, not only Americans, even Cubans that went to US after the revolution, they can apply for recompensation, and they can present in the US courts these demands. It's open. And this is a treaty not only for Cuba, for any foreign company that invests in Cuba. They can say you are investing in the land that belongs to the United States company, so you can be demanded in the US courts. This is the situation. It's trying to avoid any kind of foreign investment in Cuba, and to also to put pressure on the foreign companies not to participate, not to invest in Cuba. We can continue. But the travel, because I explained that the US citizens cannot travel to Cuba by free, but they also expand these restrictions to other countries. I explained, for example, there is one example. On September 30, 2024, a high official from Honduras was denied renewal of her ESTA visa with her Spanish passport because he had traveled to Cuba. The Europeans have this ESTA visa. It's an electronic system for travel authorization. If you want to go to US from Europe, a European want to go to US, they can apply for e-visa, and in the moment they can reach the Cuba and he can travel to US. But if you have traveled to Cuba, when you apply for the e-visa, they deny it. They say, no, you don't have the right to apply for ESTA visa, for the e-visa, because you before travel to Cuba. So you can get an appointment in the consulate, you can go, they will interview, make an interview, and at the end they will deny the visa to US because you before travel to Cuba. This is the real situation. When I say that we almost to reach 5 million visitors to Cuba, 1 million, more than 1 million were from Europe. Nowadays, it's no more than 300,000 per year. The people are scared to go to Cuba because they lost the opportunity to travel to US, and of course there are a lot of connections between European countries and US. It's not the case of India. Don't be scared. So you are not in this system. You can travel to Cuba and then to US. It's not a problem. But unfortunately, not many Indians travel to Cuba. Last year was 20,000 only. We will put more attention in order to, to increase the number of Indians traveling to Cuba to discover this wonderful country. So far, geographically speaking, but so close in feelings. Because once you get Cuba, you will see that the people love also India, the history, the visit of Fidel to India in 1973 and 83, the close relations based on mutual respect, cooperation, solidarity, and friendship that we